So good morning. So today we are going to, we're training on how to make fresh pasta and dumplings. The dumplings we'll make today are going to be gnocchi as well as spatzel. So for the sake of time today, I've already made some doughs. Typically we make our dough and we let it rest for about an hour and then we can work with it. So we'll talk about that in a minute. The first thing we want to talk about is some of the equipment that we're going to use. So you can see there's a lot of different things up here. We have, let's talk about our raviolis first. We have ravioli molds. These come in lots of different sizes, lots of different shapes. You don't need this. This is kind of fancy. This would be something where we would roll out our dough. We would put it on here. We would press down. This is our mold to make the cavity. We would fill it with whatever we're going to put in there. Today we're going to use ricotta cheese, cream cheese, Parmesan cheese, a little bit of garlic, and some fresh herb. I would either do an egg wash on top of that or a little bit of spray fat. I would put another sheet down on top of that, and then I would take my rolling pin, which I'll talk about in a minute. I would simply roll it over here, flip it over, and then cut them separately, okay? So I do have a couple of different rolling pins here. I have a French pin right here. I have a dowel. We also have basically our baking pin that we roll out like so. That's really not very good for pasta. This one actually is not either, because as you can see, it's tapered on the end. It's not level. So we want something that's nice and level that we'll just simply roll over here. We can also use this to stretch pasta. If we don't have a pasta machine like so, we can simply roll it up and we'll pull it. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We also have some basic molds that you can buy. You basically would make your, roll out your dough, put your filling in the center, put another sheet on top, and stamp them out. Circles, squares, what have you. If you don't have those, you can use cutters. So you roll out a sheet of dough and stamp them, okay? If you don't have that, you can simply take something that's round or square. Use a knife, cut it out, fold it over, or put another sheet. So again, you can use anything, any shape that you'd like. Round, square is fine. You don't need all of this other equipment. You will also need a scraper as we make our dough on our table. We pull anything that gets stuck to the table. We want to scrape all of our flour into it to make our dough. You will need a scooper as we scoop out our pasta out of our liquid. I also use a strainer here as well. When we make our gnocchi, which is our potato dumpling, I find the best way to do it is to use a potato ricer. So instead of mashing it or using the mixer, because that can develop a lot of starch, this will simply, and I'll show you how to do this when we get to this, we'll put our cooked potato in here and we'll simply squeeze it through. Okay? We also have a gnocchi board, which has grooves in it. So as we're making our dough, again, when we get to that part, we're simply gonna roll it down here. The goal is to create some grooves in here so the sauce adheres to it. Okay? And then we're gonna make some spatzel. So this is a loose dough. So this is something that we put right over the simmering water, and we pour our dough into here, and we simply run it back in the air. So as we're going back and forth, it's going into our simmering liquid and it's cooking. Okay? I suggest a scale. Anytime you're baking or making doughs, I find using volume measures, cups, is not accurate. Okay? Because your idea of a cup and my idea of a cup is something different. You may pack it in, I may keep it loose, but a scale is going to be true. Okay? I have a couple of other things here. I have a microplane. So I like to use these if we're going to add a little flavor at the end. I may just run a lemon or a lime or an orange over this just to get the essence of this. You can also use a zester, which is a little bit different. This will take pieces off like so, okay? And this is a channel knife, which is a little more broad. Okay? And then our last piece of equipment is our pasta machine. Right here, this one attaches to the table. This also has an attachment right here that I can put on for ribbon pasta. I typically don't use this just because I find that it tends to get really gummy. It gets stuck in here. So if I want to make ribbon pasta, I'll do it by hand. This goes for about $25 online. Okay? This goes for about $10, probably $15, $10, $10. So as you guys are building your toolkit, you know, you spend a little bit of money, but you'll always have this stuff. So I keep all my pasta making stuff in one container at home. So when I want to come in and do a training here, I just pick up my entire kit and I bring it in. Okay? So good. Okay, so we're going to start with our potato gnocchi today. Simply, we have taken some potatoes, and I'm going to touch on the different types of potatoes that we can use and we should use. It's basically going to be a dumpling made of potato that's been cooked, some flour, a little bit of egg, a little bit of water, salt and pepper. You can change this up by using a different type of potato. A sweet potato would be fine as well. So let's talk about the potatoes first. So you have your red potatoes and you have your bakers. These are two separate types of potatoes. This is a mealy potato. This is a waxy potato. The difference is a mealy potato is high in starch, low in sugar, low in water. This is the exact opposite. Low in starch, high in sugar, high in water. So if we were going to make French fries, we wouldn't want to use this because it's high in water. We add something that's high in water to the fryer later, we splatter. This is low in water, so these are great for frying. Okay, so you'll see recipes for gnocchi where it's calling to peel these, large dice them, poach them or simmer them in water till they're cooked. That's fine. I like to bake these because I'm not introducing any more water to the product. Okay, so what I did was I baked these for about 45 minutes till they're fork tender, and I cooked these about an hour ago. They're still a little bit warm, so you want to work with them while they're still warm. So I simply peel them, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my ricer. Okay, so if you can see here, there's different settings. All ricers are different. They make some that look like a big garlic press, and it just has one set of holes. This you can do all sorts of different holes in it. And the reason why I like using this is because it keeps it nice and light and fluffy. Because what we really want to do is we want to get that potato in here. We'll add our flour mixture and our eggs, maybe some cheese in here as well, and simply fold it together. Work it a little bit on the table. That's why I always keep some flour on the table. I call this bench flour. This is my bench. I always keep a little bit of flour here so as it gets sticky, I can scrape it up, add a little more flour, and keep going. Okay? So what I do is I take my potatoes, I just simply put these in here, and as you can see, and these are a little bit cold right now, so a little harder to go through. Okay? So you can see how nice and light they are, as opposed to putting them in a mixer with a paddle and mixing them where we're going to really develop some starch, which we don't want to do. Okay? Okay. So we did make some dough earlier, right here. So as you can see, the texture of it is a little bit loose, which is kind of what we want. So I'm simply going to put some flour down. And I'm just going to take a little bit of this off. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to roll this into a tube. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start it like so. And then I'm going to work from the center out. And I really want this no thicker than my thumb. And I'll cut these into pieces maybe about an inch and a half long. So they should really look like a small corkscrew when we're done. So So as you can see, I start in the center. And just keep working it outward. If you feel it gets a little sticky, just like you're throwing dice, okay? Not that anybody knows what that is. Okay? So the good thing about this is, and really all pasta, is I've already made some of these, and I'll make these, say, at home, and I'll lay them out on a sheet tray and I'll freeze them, just like I would do with ravioli or if I was making pot stickers. Turn it down just a bit, okay? So once they're frozen, I can just simply put them in a Ziploc bag, put them back in my freezer, and then when I want to make a meal, I can pull them out and they won't be all stuck together. If I put these in the freezer like in a bag, they're obviously going to be stuck together, okay? So I think we're pretty good here, okay? So I have a knife and my board right here, okay? So I'm just going to cut them like so. So what my goal is, again, I just want to start here. I press it down with my thumb, and I'm making some ridges, okay? And then I'm going to come back to the top, and I'm going to fold it over. So I have basically a little bullet-shaped dumpling. I'll take another one. Okay, just like so. So we have that over there. So we've already made some for today. If you don't have a board like so, you can simply use a fork. A fork will work just as well. Okay. So our water is simmering right now. I made a little bit of a sauce today. It is with oven-dried tomatoes, some mushroom, a little bit of onion. There's some vegetable base in there, and a little bit of cream. Again, this can be anything you guys want this to be, your sauce. And all we're trying to do is make something that's going to adhere to those gnocchi. Okay? Come over here. And right behind you is a platter. Okay. So we're just going to simply drop these in. And I really don't want to overload this. I have enough water in here. When we are cooking pasta, your ratio is typically about 8:1. So for every pound of pasta that you're cooking, you should have a pint of water. So if you're cooking 1 pound, you should have a gallon of water when you're cooking it. Okay?
Chef, what's this yellow thing?
That's oil. I put a little bit of olive oil in the pan as well. Okay. Put those back inside. Okay. Okay. So as those are simmering, and those really will only take a couple of minutes. So you want to wait till they start to come to the surface. Like so. I have my sauce already going. So now my sauce, what I did was, I started this a little earlier. There is heavy cream in here. So as I cook that cream down, I'm evaporating water. That's why your sauce will get richer and thicker. Because we're losing that water and we're keeping the fat in the sauce. Okay? Again, these are, you can start playing around with different flavors on this. Sweet potatoes are also nice. You can add fresh herbs right into the gnocchi. You can add different types of cheeses right into the gnocchi. Okay. Okay, so we're going to just give these. Okay. Now remember, the potato has already been cooked. Okay, we're going to cook a little bit of this flour out of this. We don't want boiling. We just want simmering on this. We really don't want boiling for anything, like if we're doing hard-boiled eggs or things like that, we don't want boiling. We want to go about 200 degrees, okay? Okay? Because we don't want that violent motion. Okay, we want to get the heat, but we don't want to say if we are doing eggs, what are they going to do? They're just going to slam against each other. Okay, we don't want, if we have a delicate pasta in here like ravioli, we don't want them banging all over each other. Okay. Okay. So as you can see, where we made the first move, so all the sauce will get down into here, as well as into the ridges. Okay. So if you would for me. Let's just scoop those out, drain them really well, and we'll put them right in here. I'm just going to garnish this with a little bit of the shredded Asiago cheese. I will keep my water simmering because we are going to move on to a couple of other items. Good breakfast. Yeah, thanks. So again, we want to try to get all that water. We don't want a lot of that water in there, just solely because I have the sauce to the thickness that I want it. Okay. I'm using a slotted spoon. This is, again, put any type of product in here. I think the sun-dried tomatoes and the mushroom gives it a nice color, gives it a great flavor. So we'll serve this one family style. I do have extra sauce here, but I'm just gonna put a little more on there. I don't wanna overload this. Bit of just a touch of parsley, give it a little green. Okay. And that's your potato gnocchi. So the next dough we're working with is our fresh pasta dough. This is simply all-purpose flour, eggs, a little bit of salt and pepper, a little bit of olive oil, and a touch of water. So this is just a basic dough, okay? The beauty of this is you can make this your own. We can add some saffron into this if we want, so it'll be bright yellow. We could get some different vegetable powders like beet powder or carrot powder or whatever it is, so we're gonna add a color to this. We could even add some pesto to our dough as we're making this. You can make different colored doughs, put them together, and as we run them through the machine, they become one dough. So we could have a sheet of dough where you have green and yellow on there as we make our raviolis, okay? So I have a pasta machine here. This has different settings. I'm simply gonna start on the widest setting and run my dough through. And again, while I'm thinking, what am I making here? Well, I wanna fill this. So I wanna make sure that my dough is wide enough and long enough for a little overhang, because I am gonna put this in here and push the dough down. I'll fill the dough. We made, again, a cheese mixture here. I'll spray it, put another sheet on top, roll it over, turn it over, and cut it. Now, I do not have a cutter like this, like the little pizza cutters that we use, has that same shape. I'm just gonna use a knife for that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a little bit of bench flour down. This dough still is a little bit sticky. I'm going to just help this along a little bit here. You can also buy these if you have a electric mixer at home. You can buy the attachments for those. Those are a little bit pricey. They run about $200, $250. Okay. Like I said, this one is manual and it does the same job. Okay. So what I'm doing is I just want to flatten these out a little bit, try to get them to the same shape as they go through the machine. Okay. And as you flatten it out, you'll find that it probably will be a little bit sticky. Now, I don't want to add so much flour to this that I'm incorporating it into the dough, because then it's going to become tough. But I do want to have some nice uniform shape. So I made my first pass through. I'll go ahead and do the same on this one. Stretch it out a little bit. And I'll also show you how to cut this if we were to make, say, spaghetti, linguine or fettuccine or pappardelle, okay? So now I did my first pass. I'm gonna move this in so the roll has become a little tighter. It'll flatten it down even further. Now you can make these as thin or as thick as you want. You do have to remember how much filling am I putting in there, and the thinner that I go, the less structure that I have. And you can see just from that second pass how much flatter it got. Turn that water up a little bit, and let's turn that pesto on just a little bit, okay? So I think I'll do one more pass here. So if you really get this where you're really getting it thin, you often will need a second person over here to help with the rolling. So that looks pretty good. I can also hand stretch this out just a little bit. Is that butane good? Okay. So you see, as I pulled it out, it's now that the gluten strands started here and it just snapped back. So we're not trying to create too much gluten. Gluten is like the rubber bands of the dough that gives it structure. So the more we work with this, the more rubber bands we're creating, the tougher this becomes. So what I could do is, if I wanted to make linguine, or if I wanted to make fettuccine or something, I could simply, if I didn't want to use the attachment here, I would simply roll this up, take my knife, and cut. Typically what you would do is you would then take it, and there are drying racks that are made out of wood, and they have these arms that come out, and you would simply drop the pasta over there so it dries out a little bit. So when you're cooking the fresh pasta, this cooks really quick. This should really only be probably 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes. Dry pasta is going to be anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes. Okay? Spray. So I'm going to use some spray. You can certainly use an egg wash if you wanted to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and if you could grab that other tray out of the walk-in, please, for me. Okay. So I have it, it's now sitting a little bit over there. I'm going to just put my mold in here. I have a very small scoop. I'm just going to fill it. Again, the beauty of making pasta, your own pasta, is you know exactly what's going in it. You can be as creative as anything you can buy from the supermarket, and typically it's going to be a lot cheaper. I'll spray this. On here. Now I'm going to take my flat pin. Just want to seal up those edges. So again, if I had one of those pizza cutters like this, I would simply cut along there. I'm not going to. I'll just use a knife, like so. I can use that dough again if I choose to. I don't want to reuse it too many times because again, I'm developing all of this gluten. So as you can see, we already made some here. Grab me that plate over there, please. So I always will put a little bit of flour, a little cornmeal down here. And it's best to work with this dough while it's a little bit cool, so it's a little bit easier to work with. Okay, so we're going to cook up the pasta that we did a little bit earlier. We're going to make a pesto sauce today, which is simply going to be, we use the prepared one that we serve here. Pesto is simply going to be basil and some cheese and pine nuts and garlic, but again, you can make that however you choose. Okay, so if you would, let's go ahead and drop maybe a dozen of those in there. And then while he's doing that, we will start working on our last dough, which is our spatzel, and that's very quick. That dough's already done. I don't really have to do anything to that one. Okay. So this is our spatzel dough. As you can see, it's very loose, because what we'll do is when those raviolis come out, we will put a spatzel board right on there. It has a little attachment so this doesn't slide along, and then we're simply gonna push this along. As the dumpling drops in there, it'll cook very, very quick. So we do want to have our other sauce ready to go. And I'm just going to do a simple butter sauce. I'm going to flavor that with a little bit of fresh sage in here, a little bit of garlic. Again, try to keep these sauces, or this sauce is kind of as simple as I can, so it doesn't overshadow the dumpling. I wouldn't put something very heavy because this is going to be very delicate on here. I may want to cook this butter a little past where it should be, so it's almost starts to burn. So you can see it's taking on that brownish color. That's okay. It's a brown butter or beurre noisette. It takes on a real nutty flavor. You can go a little bit past that where it becomes blackened, takes on a different flavor as long as it's not burnt. Beurre noir, black butter is also nice. Okay, so we're going to do that one momentarily. As soon as you're good on those, I'm going to have you put your ravioli in there, and then we're going to plate up right here. So if I had some fresh basil leaves, that would be nice to put on here as well. Or if I had some, say, some oven-dried tomatoes for some nice color, I could just simply put those on there. Or some stewed tomatoes might be nice on there too, just to give it some color accent. Okay? Any questions? Hungry? Okay. Okay, so go ahead and pop those in there. And again, this was the pesto, and I added some heavy cream to this as well. And we want to make sure that there's no water, excess water going in there. So again, you'll play around with the thickness of these. Again, the thicker they are, the more stable they're going to be. I typically like to do a nice, very nice thin one. Okay? We're just going to layer some of these on here. Sauce. Pour it off here. Okay. And that is our, turn that one on. A little bit of cheese. And that's our fresh raviolis. Okay. And then our last one we're going to do is going to be spatzel. It'll be very quick as soon as that sauce heats up. Get it on. Has anybody made fresh pasta at home before? Yeah? How'd it turn out?
My grandma does like her own recipe. We've made it for like ever.
So no measuring.
Right.
No measuring.
She's great, but when I tried it, it wasn't as good as she did.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't do it all the time, I do recommend, and I always recommend finding a reputable source. If you're going online, Google pasta, you're going to get everybody's recipe. I mean, I take most of these recipes out of a professional textbook. So they've been tried and true, so we know that they're pretty close. We talked earlier this morning about how humidity will affect dough as well. Here in Tampa, it's 100 degrees and 100% humidity, where that is going to affect how things play out. Where if you're in a colder region, different altitude, that will certainly play out. Okay, so this is our last one. If you want to put that right on there. Okay. And what I'm going to do is, and as I do this, you're going to, once I get it in there, go ahead and start. Okay. Can you smell that sage? So as you can see here, they're very small, and they come to the surface. Should be good. Other types of dumplings that we could make, we can make pierogies, which we really didn't have time today, which is an Eastern European dish, usually filled with sauerkraut or some sweet type of thing, or cheese and sauteed onions. In another class, we'll do some Asian dumplings and show you different ways to make pot stickers and shumai. Okay. Okay. that's your spatula. Okay. Any questions before we dig in? No? Okay. Thank you.